Since 1988, there has been a partnership between 6 communities in the southern highlands of Honduras and the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina. For most of that time, the partnership has revolved around the North Americans training local health care promoters and staffing annual medical and dental clinics. I'm Peter Crow, and for the last 4 years, I've been the group's videographer. But this video is not about the work of the Honduras Health Mission. Rather, it is about interpersonal aspects of people from a capital-rich country going to help people from a capital-poor country. We may not like to think of it this way, but those of us from the USA or similar world powers who go to Honduras or similar lesser world powers in order to be helpful are still, in large measure, conquistadors. We aren't colonial conquistadors who steal the indigenous people's land and gold and force convert them to our own religion. What we are conquerors of problems. Our religion tells us to help solve other people's problems they don't have the resources to solve on their own. However benign or even noble that definition of conquistador may be, it still puts us on the horse and them on the ground. That disparity makes it impossible to establish authentic personal relationships, just as you cannot have an authentic personal relationship with a servant, a student, an employee, or anyone else over whom you wield power. You may have a cordial relationship, you may have an effective working relationship, but the power disparity prevents an open, honest, personal relationship. Some groups use names like cultural exchange or service learning in place of mission or service project to suggest benefits going both ways, not just from north to south. But changing a name and a few activities won't change the fundamentals of an unbalanced relationship. What might change those fundamentals is what we're going to explore here. My first instinct in addressing the possibility of open, honest personal connections was to look beyond the clinical aspects of our Honduran partners to their everyday lives. With the help of a grant, we started an oral history project looking into local culture and traditions. Gold mining, as it turns out, is one of the economic pillars of the area. And I happen to be staying with a host family, the Rosales, that own and operate a small mine. So I was able to get an inside look at not just the mining of gold, but also at the processing required to consolidate enough gold dust into a valuable nugget. Holes are drilled for the placement of dynamite, which crumbles the surrounding surface into piles of rock and dirt containing traces of gold. Workers shovel this rock and dirt into bags, which are then trucked down the mountain to a processing area.
Nosotros este es un molino para moler brosa de oro, sacar oro. Se procesa toda el día, toda la noche, 100 sacos.
As the bags of rock and dirt are mixed with water and mercury in a large grinding pit called a rostra, the mercury begins to bind with the gold. Then much of the water is drained into a holding pond, and the remaining mixture is carefully swept up and poured into a wooden device called a channel, where the gold and mercury are separated from the dirt. Finally, the gold and mercury is squeezed together in a special filter, which separates out most of the mercury. Each week, the mine produces 120 to 150 grams of gold, for which Don Alfredo receives the equivalent of about $25 per gram. Doing a gold mining documentary meant that at least some sort of exchange was taking place between the North American medicos and the Hondurans. It was testimony to the fact that they had something valuable that we wanted. Not the gold itself this time, but the knowledge of how they mine it, taught from parent to child, using machine power as modern technology permits, yet still continuing as a family enterprise. What I didn't fully realize at the time was the relational dimension of doing the documentary. When we arrived at the processing area, our power roles were quickly reversed. I was the learner, and Don Alfredo was the teacher. He was in a position of superior knowledge, not only about the mining operation, but also of the Spanish language that I was just beginning to learn. Then, when we went into the mine, another relational reversal occurred. In the normal relationship in our clinics of doctor-patient, the Hondurans are having to trust us and whether or not what we are prescribing is useful or even safe. Don Alfredo walked into a small tunnel in a mountain without any safety gear. It was very dark. There were sudden drop-offs and only a few puny-looking supportive timbers. I could see him wondering if I would follow. This was his world. Did I trust him enough to lay aside my Enlightenment skepticism and enter it? On my day with Don Alfredo, I experienced what I had seen some of my more seasoned colleagues experience by getting themselves invited into the lives of our Honduran partners. It makes for a satisfying personal connection as well as a significant cultural exchange. And making these kinds of connections and exchanges in the public world of what people do can probably be accomplished alongside whatever your North American work group came to do. Making connections in the more private, intimate world of who people are is more difficult and likely requires trust with local people that takes some time to develop. This past October, I had the opportunity during rainy season to spend a week in El Corpus with the family of Hernan and Isabel Lainez. For the duration of the link between the Episcopal Diocese of North Carolina and the United Communities of the El Corpus District, their daughter Juanita has been the contact person and organizer in Honduras. But in October, she is fully engaged in her normal life as principal of the high school in El Corpus. I wanted to spend some time with the Lainez extended family, for it is no secret that who people are in economically challenged countries is frequently linked closely with family. I was accompanied on this trip by Juanita's sister Sandra and brother Omar, both of whom have immigrated to the United States, where we live near each other in the Raleigh area of North Carolina. Omar was my guide and interpreter. Omar came to the United States in 1999 with the help of a Peace Corps volunteer, in order to take advantage of opportunities here and also to put himself in a financial position to help his family in Honduras. He currently works with Legal Aid of North Carolina to advise farm workers of their legal rights. Recently, he and his USA-born wife Monica bought a house in El Corpus between his parents' house and that of Juanita's family. They have told me of their dreams of moving there with their 2 children to be closer to Omar's extended family. Why they would want to make such a move is a matter of great importance to our search for what our southern neighbors have to exchange for our charitable services, and thus what might provide a footing for more meaningful personal relationships. Besides Sandra, Omar and Juanita have one other sister, Kelleen, the youngest of the 7 siblings, currently commuting to college to study international business. There are 2 brothers living in Honduras, Roher, who teaches high school near Choluteca, and Carlos, an accountant living in El Corpus. A 3rd brother, Javier, sometimes challenges the family's values, not to mention the family's patience. He lived for 4 years without legal documentation in the Raleigh area until he was recently injured on a job and had to return home to El Corpus, where the self-described prodigal son seems immensely happy to be. Given the challenges of traditional courtship in El Corpus, it is a wonder that extended families ever get started.
Aunque ella estaba viviendo con las monjas, los padres y los hermanos de ella siempre estaban pendientes de ella para cuidarla. Entonces, los papás de ella mandaban a Darling, a Javier, Darling Javier y a Omar, que estaban muy cipotes, muy pequeños, a vigilarla, a cuidarla, que con quién se quedaba aquí en la esquina de la casa, que quién era el hombre, y cuando quiere tener un novio, el novio tiene que ir a pedir la llegada, a platicar con los padres, que quiere ser el novio de ella. Entonces los padres por lo menos saben de que ella va a andar con el varón, ¿va? Que hay buenas intenciones para un futuro matrimonio.
While the Lainez family is considered upper middle class by rural Honduran standards, there's nothing luxurious about their standard of living. Each must work very hard to achieve even modest goals. Juanita and Pedro's eldest daughter Iris exemplifies this family characteristic. She gets to her teaching job each morning by first catching an unreliable bus at daybreak for part of the journey, then, if she is lucky, hitchhiking with gold miners for the second stretch, and finally hiking 20 hard minutes up the side of a mountain to reach her school. Her round-trip commute averages 3 hours a day. While at school, she plays toward her pupils much the same supportive role her family plays towards her, channeling the seemingly boundless energy of her charges toward healthy, creative activity. When she arrives back home late in the afternoon, she takes up chores of cooking and cleaning along with the rest of the family. During the week I was in El Corpus, the family photo was not an event, but the central event of the week, repeated in 2 locations, inside and outside. Parents and children all proudly present, everybody dressed up and smiling. I think it was important for them to record the 2 generations together, something unfortunately that doesn't happen very often in their lives. If the family photos seem the central event during the rainy week, Doña Isabel's adobe stove was the central gathering place. The gentle blaze provided comfort against the endless rain, and everybody around, it seemed, and even time itself, stopped in for a rest. There was a television in the house, but it was no competition for anything that might be happening in the sheltered but open area where Doña Isabel presided over her stove. Here Juanita presented Omar with gifts for his children back home. Here the family gathered to watch video of these same children growing up fast, way too far away. Here people sat around drying themselves while sipping some of Doña Isabel's soup or eating a tortilla or 2. Here is where the family fiesta took place before Omar, Sandra, and I headed back to the USA. Throughout El Corpus and the surrounding communities, no matter how much use is made of modern inventions, family is the driving force for daily activities. It is what sends some members, mostly men, off to gather wood or earn some money. It is what keeps some members, mostly women, at home cooking, washing clothes, raising kids. There's no word in their vocabulary for babysitter or housekeeper. The Lainez family seems unusual mainly in that the women and men are equally well educated and feel equally motivated to step into leadership roles in public life. And the men seem completely comfortable with this arrangement. Our Honduran partners don't talk about God a lot, but God is almost always a part of the family and community culture. The Catholic Church dominates the center of El Corpus, and the town's defining legend relates both to the church and to gold mining.
Hace ya mucho tiempo surgió una leyenda. Después de los españoles hubo una leyenda que se llama el lagarto de oro en la mina Clavo Rico. Ese lagarto de oro apareció un día Viernes Santo, cuando los trabajadores de los españoles dijeron: jefe, está un lagarto de oro aquí en la mina. Entonces ellos fueron a ver y lo vieron que estaba en una poza. De repente dijeron: hasta los ángeles del cielo nos van a ayudar a sacar este lagarto. Cuando ellos estaban diciendo eso, se derrumbó la mina y quedaron soterrados como 150 hombres, herramientas y todo. Debido a eso, construyeron la iglesia católica del municipio del Corpus en el año 1885.
During the week I spent with the Lainez family, I witnessed an unforgettable example of the family extending itself in a way that I understood to be a reflection of their Christian values. One afternoon, a woman who did not seem to be a member of the family was sitting near Doña Isabel's adobe stove eating some of Doña Isabel's soup. Later, as she was leaving, Roger and Omar engaged her in conversation about her obvious suffering.
Me levanté un tamboteado que estaba lavando en la casa unos trapos. Y levanté unos trapos y entonces me bregué.
Pero... no, pero allí le van a cobrar.
Ay,
Allí le van a cobrar. ¿Qué tal
yo
si le
me
doy?
siento mal, ¿no crees?
¿Y los frijoles están buenos?
No, me que sembré un poquito y todo se arruinaron.
¿También le echaron gramoxón a los frijoles?
No, es que se arruinaron con el agua.
Pero...
Se destruyeron y se cayeron. Ya floreando.
¿Y el maíz? Ese murió.
Ese lo mató él.
Pero no fue intencional.
No, es que equivocado.
Siempre que la miro, siempre yo me acuerdo cuando estaba allá su hijo,
El finado Felipe.
el finado Felipe.
Mire, yo le mandé a hacer con cuadra, no sé.
Entonces ahí lo querían mucho y le decían el alcalde, el hijo de ella. Y era el hijo que lo que ganaba se lo traía a ella. Pero de repente vino y había una fiesta un sábado y él se fue a la fiesta a ayudarle a jalarle, ¿cómo te quiero decir? Cajillas de fresco a la gente que iban a hacer la fiesta. Entonces, por una ventana él estaba comprando un fresco y otro estaba comprando una cerveza. Entonces inocentemente viene el hombre y según escuché yo y él hizo el tiro y le pegó al muchacho. Entonces se murió el muchacho. Pero es que más le quería comer unas pastillas.
Mire, yo tengo de estas pastillas que yo he tomado para un dolor en la espalda. Pero nada más de que tiene que comer suficiente porque solo le va a tomar una.
Ya me voy a ver.
Le voy a dar pero si no tienen, es inmediatamente después de comer. Ahorita no la tomo.
So what does the Lainez family, or others in rural Honduras, have to exchange for the medical benefits we conquistadors provide? It is perhaps their most important home remedy, yet not one of the medicinal plants they would recognize as such, because the disease whose pain it can alleviate is as much a cold climate disease as malaria is a warm climate disease. T.S. Eliot identifies it as a wasteland of the human spirit. Soren Kierkegaard called it the sickness unto death. The disease causes an insatiable desire for more things. It is the very disease that afflicted the Spaniards lusting for gold in the legend of the Golden Lizard. The disease forces life into a fever pitch of personal recognition and competition. Getting and spending, we lay waste our powers, says William Wordsworth, though it might have been Isaiah or Jesus or Gandhi or Mandela or even Albus Dumbledore. One's family, one's God, exist in service to oneself, and oneself is defined by the stampede of others all around us. The Honduran home remedy for this sickness is in fact their home itself. In part the hard work that keeps the home alive, in part the kinship network that holds the family together. It is why I believe home for Omar Lainez, his North American wife, and their children is in Honduras and not in North Carolina where they work and reside. They hope someday to take what they have learned in North Carolina about economic security and personal freedom to enhance their lives in Honduras. We 21st century conquistadors need to do the reverse. Take what we witness about fortitude and faith and family commitment in an economically struggling culture and use it to enhance our own lives in North America. In doing so, we take part in a radical form of mission and service. Formation of authentic give and take friendships that reach across cultures and languages and whatever people may have or not have. Friendships that force us to receive and grow ourselves as well as to give and help others grow. Friendships that are especially precious because, thanks be to God, we have stretched so far to make them happen.